Hey cosplayers, got a great another patterning video for you guys. How do you pattern something when you have a bunch of different layers like this and get them all to work well and layer on top of each other without everything being messed up? We're going to cover that in today's video. If you guys haven't, make sure to subscribe and hit that bell notification so you get notified whenever we come out with these cosplay quick tip clips every weekday, so that you can stay on top of your game and cosplay like a boss. If you guys are excited about this video, then comment right now in the comments below with the words layer up. Alright, so comment with layer up. Do it right now. I'll wait for you. Okay, let's go ahead and jump in. We're going to come over here and we're going to talk through what the layers are that we're looking at, and then we'll come back over to our mannequin and our base that we kind of made in the previous video, and then start talking about how we're going to start to add layers on to that base for our pattern, right? So come on over here and let's sit down and take a look at the layers that we've got. So what we did previously in our silhouetting video was we took this and we shaded in the base layer. That's all right. Let's focus now. Okay. We shaded in the kind of just base layer outline. If you look at right here, you'll see this black area that sits underneath all of these other layers. We found that and we just silhouetted that out so that when we were building our thing on the mannequin, we could just create that base first, so that we're not getting distracted by the layers, the details. We've just silhouetted it out to create that shape. Now, the one that you're going to see, I did it very quickly. I didn't actually try to make it too perfect or anything like that. Just because we're doing this for demonstration purposes, I didn't want to spend a ton of time on it, getting it just perfect. But now what we're going to do, so we have that black base layer. What we're going to need to do first is draw that onto our piece. But then we've got this layer here that's going to come across there. And actually, this layer looks like it crosses over on top of this. You can see that a little bit more here, where it kind of seems to a little overlap or at least butt up to this a little bit. So we've got that we need to do as well. And then, of course,
do you want to write out like one?
Yeah, so we've got one right there. And then we have this one right here. Got another layer right there. And then you can see from the side here that we actually have this one that's going to come across. Sorry, didn't do that super clean, but there we go. And then there looks to be another one that comes across, because this seems to span all the way across. There's going to be another little gully over here too before we get to this back layer here, which is going to be like that, right? So, and then, well, it's going to be, here we go, we got 4, 5, this one's 6, and then so we have
this 5 isn't part of this?
No. Yeah, there's if you look here, we got this, it comes up in here, and this spans goes to the edge of this, spans this comes up right to the center of it. So if you're expecting it to go the rest of the way, it's likely that there's going to be another little gully right there before this comes and connects into this one. So that's what tells me that there's actually 2 of these versus just connecting into this right away on the back, because this loops all the way around and touches into this one in the back. Yeah. So and then we've got these 2 guys here as well, so 7 and 8. Okay, so those are the things we've got to kind of account for. If we look here on the side as well with our black base layer, we do have to draw kind of a little bit of our design in a little bit that we didn't do in the previous video. So with that, let's go ahead and head over to the mannequin. And so you can see here, once again, I didn't try to make this exactly like the Samus character. I just tried to do it something similar to give you guys the idea. But what I'm going to do first is, here's our base, right, that black layer. I'm going to go in and I'm going to just draw on that base layer, and then we'll come right back. Okay, so real quick, just started drawing this. Wanted to show you guys. So here on the side, I just wanted to draw this little upcrop thing, and then I just want to kind of get what the actual outline is, because if you guys remember in the previous video for creating that base, I went past where I needed to, and now I'm just trying to kind of draw in what that actual outline looks like so that we know what we're working with. So we'll continue. I'll show you what that looks like after we have that drawn. Okay, so here we go. I drew it out. Our outline here, you can see, and then I started off just outlining it in pencil, as you saw, and then I went back and once I was happy with it, or the right lines, I went and drew along it with the Sharpie. The beautiful thing about working with this is that if you draw something in the wrong spot, or you don't like the way it looked when you did do it in Sharpie, just simply grab a piece of tape, cover over it, and you're good to go. Alright, so now what I'm going to do is we're focusing on the next layers that are going to be after the black layer here, right? So we're going to start doing this one, this one, this one, this one, and this one back here. And I'm going to draw those on, but what I want to do first is actually draw on or put on some tinfoil and tape in a second layer on top of this, so that when I pull this apart and I'm cutting out my patterns, I can have them as separate pieces, and it also helps to add to the thickness to create less guesswork for your layering when you go to add it to foam. Alright, so I'm going to jump to that, start drawing this, and then we'll go ahead and show you when we've got that. Okay, so when I'm adding this tin and tape layer for the second layer, I like to try to kind of just put the tinfoil along the edge of the outline that I had, so that I can then know exactly where my outline was again, and then just take, you know, the little pieces of tape and then tape that down. Nope, good. And you'll just kind of tape that down along the edge, and then where that tinfoil ends, you know, that's like where your line is. And so I like to kind of just bend and fold the tinfoil, fold it back on itself, so that I'm only really putting it along that line. I'll go ahead and tape that down, and then I'll show you kind of what that looks like once I get it all taped up. Okay, so I started drawing out some of the details, right, the different layers that we looked at the beginning. And I want to just mention a couple things here. So this is a bendy ruler, super helpful. I'll put a link in the description when you're patterning, because I wanted to find the kind of roughly the center point here and draw that. So I found the center here, kind of estimated where it would be up on the shoulder, and then I'm able to kind of just bend this around, and then I can use that to kind of draw my straight line for reference when I'm doing some of these other details there. Something you want to check out our proportioning video that we did, and as you're going through this process, what I like to do is I just kind of like to use the proportions and things like that and find certain spots where certain things are going to hit visually, and I'll just kind of mark those, and then you end up kind of looking at the front, mark them, do it from the side, mark those proportions, and then kind of connect the dots right in between. So that's just a couple tips on that. I'm going to keep drawing this, come back when we have these layers drawn. Alright, so got a bunch of the layers drawn on here. Now, because all of these layers don't necessarily overlap each other, these ones butt up against each other, but they don't overlap. I didn't have to do more than just that one tin and tape extra layer. If there were more that then layered on top of this and things like that, you might want to do that. You can always draw it on the same one if it's supposed to be in another layer, and then just cut that out when it's time to trace that after you've already traced this one. It kind of depends on your preference or how you plan on doing it. If you are going to be digitizing the pattern before you make it, then you can actually probably avoid a lot of the extra layering, even though it is helpful, helps save you time in the digitizing process. But you can just kind of try to add a little bit extra, digitizing it, expand it just a little bit to account for another layer up, kind of thing. But anyway, so I've got them numbered here, just like we numbered them out on the piece of paper. So we've got one right here is this piece that runs around. Then we've got 2. Then we've got 3, 4. Once again, I did not make this perfect or try to get it exactly spot on. I just whipped this out super quick just to be able to give you guys the idea here of what we're trying to accomplish. And then 5 right there. Now, if you'll notice, we haven't done 6 and 7, those 2 pieces that kind of stick up off of here. So that's what we'll do next. But right before that, I want to mention what I've done is marked the parts that are going to be cut out, the layers, with the black. But if there's any kind of details like panel etching detail type of things that you're going to do with scoring the foam and then heating it and getting that to open up, or doing wood burning or anything like that. Any of those kind of details that you're wanting to do, I would mark those. I have a color-coded system for doing that. Sorry, the dog's barking. Cedric! Come on, bud! Come on! Anyway, there he is. Come on, go sit in your box. Go sit in your box of foam. Okay, anyway, sorry. Then you want to mark those out differently. I have a color-coded system that I use and recommend. So you can see here I did a blue dotted or dashed line right there for these little circle spots because they look like they're indented in here. And so what I know I can do in the foam is actually do a groove cut, which is what I use for blue. And then the fact that it's dotted means I'm going to do that groove cut on the underside of the foam, not on the top. And so I use blue for undercuts, green for scoring details, purple for wood burning details, silver for parts that need to have straight cuts, gold for beveled cuts. So because all of these were straight and black showed up better for you guys on camera, I did all these in black. But I would usually do them in silver, and when I create my patterns, that's how I portray them as well, to make it easy so that when you go to trace it on, you know exactly what you're doing. So that color code that I'm just talking about, I'm going to include like a free PDF download link in the description so that you guys can download that and reference that, kind of what I use for each color and what it represents, so that you can adopt that same method. It helps a ton when you're transferring your pattern onto your material, foam or otherwise, to be able to know, oh, hey, yeah, this one's supposed to be a straight cut, or this one's supposed to be cut at a bevel, or in this case, oh, hey, I don't cut that out. You know, if it was all in black, you might go and cut this out, and then you're like, okay, I got the circle. Oh, but that's the wrong thing. This needs to be indented in this piece. So this tells you, hey, I need to flip over the foam, trace the circle on there, and then do an undercut to be able to get that indented effect with heating it and then pressing it in. So yeah, I'll put a PDF of that color code for you guys and have that available in the description. So what I'm going to do now is we're going to jump onto our 6 and 7 pieces, the ones that kind of stick up here. And the way we're going to do that is with our cereal box cardboard. Ooh. Toasted flakes with fruit and yogurt. One of my favorite cereals. All right. So what we'll do, and this is again where the bendy ruler is going to come in handy, because you can figure out, hey, where are those going to go, and you can mark the spots where those are going to go, and then you can take the bendy ruler and bend it along that shape that you have there from the pauldron, and then you can take that and trace it onto that bend, that curve, onto the cardboard, and draw out your part that's going to stick up. And I'll show you what that looks like once I kind of get those placed on, and how to anticipate the foam thickness or the material thickness that you're going to be using when you're doing that, something like that. So we're going to jump to that. I'll get those added, and then I'll show you and tell you a little bit more about that. All right, so basically what I did is I just found out kind of along this center line, okay, it's going to sit here, and I just marked a line across the length of where those will be going from. So if you remember, they went all the way to the edge of these gaps. And so then what I do is I take my bendy ruler, and because the end doesn't really bend as much, I'm going to start at 2 inches here, and I'm just going to measure the length from there, bending around the curve to the end over here, just going along my line there, and that goes from about 2 inches over to 7 inches, and I just make sure that this angle is bent into my curve, into my bendy ruler. I'm going to come over to here. Now we have to remember that's the bottom of the piece that we want, so I'm going to go from 2 inches here to, you can see better there, to 7 inches here. Mark those two and just draw right along that curve for this one. Now that's the bottom of my piece, right? So then from there, I'm just going to kind of draw. Now if I was using my proportions techniques and everything like that, I'd be a lot more careful about, like, okay, what's my shape look like? How tall is it going to be? in proportion to the other things. So check out that proportions video so that you can take your time with this and really make it perfect. But I'm just going to kind of sketch this out real quick like that. And now I can just cut that out, and then I'm going to be able to just tape that onto the thing. And so I'll get both of those on there, and then I'll show you what that looks like. I'll just tape it right along that line. So we'll jump to that. Okay, so I just cut out the piece. I just wanted to show you guys this taping technique for taping this on. I just threw a piece of tape across here, and then what I'm going to do is just kind of rip this in a couple places to kind of get that to be able to fold back on itself there. Maybe we rip this one in half since it's kind of big. Fold it back on itself like that. And then you can do that same thing on the other side. Set that down, and then you take a piece of tape again. Let's cut that down a little bit. Here, and then rip it down into a couple pieces. And then I'll show you guys the magic of this. And you just take this piece, this is number 7, it's going to go right here to right here. You set it on there, and then you just take each of those pieces, tape them down. And same thing on the other side. There you go. And then you've got your piece that's pretty well secured on there. Now, when you have this on, what you want to do is think, what thickness of foam are you going to be using to create this piece? And then what you'll want to do is on the layer below this, just draw. So once we pull this off, this is to get placed and make sure it looks right and everything like that. And then once we start disassembling this, you want to take this center line that we went along and then just mark out that width of the foam. So if you're doing 10 millimeter, mark along from that center line, mark 5 millimeters to the right, 5 millimeters to the left, and just draw that out so that when you have your pattern, you know kind of where you're going to need to place that foam on either side so that it fits right where you planned it to fit. So I'm going to just slap this other one on, and then we'll go ahead and go through that process of kind of taking it apart and how that would go down. All right, so here we go. We've got our nice little cereal box pieces on there, and we've got all of our layers drawn on, front and back. We've got some of our key things that we're going to need to know when we go to trace onto foam that we can mark at this point so that later on we don't have to forget and end up cutting it wrong or ask, no, wait, was that supposed to be a detail line, or did I cut that? You know? And now let's just go ahead and we'll start kind of going through taking this off and how we're going to kind of take it off in pieces that you can then use as your patterns to trace on the foam. So these guys right here, they're just going to peel off. We're just going to trim off that tape, and then these pieces are exactly what you're just going to need. So like I mentioned, you'll want to, based on the foam, the thickness of foam you plan on using for this piece, in this scenario, same thing I did on my hiccup helmet with those fins kind of thing. You just want to, on either side of the center line that you just drew and tape that along, you just want to mark out, you know, if it's 10 millimeter, 5.5, if it's a 8 millimeter, 4.4. If you're using what the foam, and it's going to be a 6 millimeter, something like that, do 3.3, and just draw those lines on there in pencil so that you just know and can use that to reference where that's going to go. Maybe you can even just shade it in where that's supposed to go. But anyway, so what we're going to do, I've got my dope knife here, and we're going to start. So remember, this is our second layer. I'm going to carefully, you just want to cut through this layer of tape and tin, but not cut through into our one below that too much. And the reason I want to do this is because we're going to want to actually trace a little bit onto our base layer where these were going to be going on our base layer, so that way we can outline those on our base so that when we go to place these on, we have kind of an outline of where these are supposed to get glued on, and we're not just guessing, right? So I'm just kind of cutting along. I'm not pushing too hard. Mostly I'm just trying to score along here. And what I'll be able to do here in a second is I can kind of lift up this layer, and if I didn't miss any parts, I can just kind of cut along that. Okay, so then I'm just up here in the corner. I'm going to try to make sure I got through my, okay. So there's my tinfoil and tape on this, and I may have pressed a little too hard. I think I cut into a couple of spots a little too deep, but you can always come along and as you kind of lift this up, get anything that you may have missed. Okay, so now that we got that pulled off, what I want to do real quick is just trace on where that went on our base layer here. With a pencil, I might actually switch over to my marker just to get that to show up better. You'll just want to make sure you remember on this base layer, this marker line isn't necessarily that you're cutting it on this base layer. That's just telling you where these are going to go. And this will actually help in the video we're going to be putting out tomorrow on being able to convert your patterns into a way where you can trace them onto your foam, where you can avoid having any seams at all, so you don't have to fill them. Okay, so then you would just continue that process. So this part's going to just be the base layer, so we don't need to worry about that. We're going to cut out this section, this piece here, do that same thing, trace that, this, and this, and we'll go to that point, and I'll show you what the base layer looks like at that point. Alright, so I've got all the pieces taken off, and I'll show you those in just a second. But like I said, as I was going, I traced out each of those pieces onto our base layer here. And you'll see why this is going to be super helpful in an upcoming video. So now all I need to do is just get our base outline. So this is our base layer now. Again, I've cut down the top layer of the other, of the second layer that we did. I'm just going to cut down out this whole base outline, and then I'll show you what that looks like, and we'll take a look at all of our pieces and kind of where to go from there. Alright, so we did it. This has kind of been a long video, but I hope it's been super helpful for you guys. So here you can see we have all of our pieces now that we've taken off of the pattern. So this was our base layer, and then here were our layers that we did on top of that. So you remember we used the silhouetting technique and our proportions technique to create this base layer. Then we used our proportions technique and also silhouetting and things like that too to create each of these layers, drawing them on a second tin and tape layer that we did, and then drew all these out, marked them up the way we needed to, numbered them so we can keep track of them, and we also, as we were pulling them off, traced them onto here so that we, on our base, we kind of know where those are supposed to go and be lined up. But then also too, you can see that this base is, there's no way, a lot of these, they're already ready to go. We can trace them right onto foam. We're good to go. This one, however, has a lot that still needs to happen to it before we can make this flat in a 2D shape that we can then trace onto foam and then glue together to get this big complex curve in the pauldron. Now, in a previous video, we covered how to make darts, kind of a simple, easy way to just go ahead and make a dart to be able to relieve the pressure in a complex curve like this. So check out that video. But if you're wanting to up your game and save time in later on from having to clean up seams and things like that, in a video we'll be coming out with tomorrow, we'll be going through, taking this and going through how you can utilize the fact that this has layers to be able to eliminate the potential of pretty much any seam being seen. And so make sure to stay tuned for that. Make sure to subscribe. If you haven't already, hit that bell notification so you get notified of all of our upcoming videos. And once you have them at this point, and you get this one all two-dimensional, then you can take a photo of them and be able to turn them into digitize them. Maybe we'll do a video in the future on how to digitize your pattern to be able to then share with other people that they can then use. If you guys are interested in that, let me know in the comments right now. Say, hey, yeah, I'd love to see a video on how you digitize your patterns, and we'll make sure to create that for you. But for now, I will leave you with this. Hopefully this has been helpful. If it has, please give it a like. If you know somebody that can benefit from this, please share it with them. Like, comment, share, all of those things help to be able to spread the word and be able to help answer these questions that many other people just like you have. And let us know what questions you have. We'll answer them in a future video. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Give this video a share and a like, and cosplay on, my friends. See ya.